What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we gotta talk about a major hint that a Superman game is coming. It's actually insane, and I wouldn't blame you to say, well, Alex, I'm just gonna wait until it happens, right? I'll believe it when I see it. I think you've earned that argument as a fan if you want to go down that road and say, nothing they could ever say is gonna convince me. Seeing it, playing it actually in my hand, and playing it maybe like a single player, open world, that kind of game, you have to see it to believe it. I totally understand that. However, during an earnings call, they were talking about the gaming division. That's important to kind of lead because they talk about like the metaverse and other kind of garbage like that, which we are going to read, but it's all in context of gaming. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head. Let's read out what they said, and then we'll discuss if it truly is a hint. I believe it is. So this is literally from David Zaslav, okay? We have a very good gaming business with 11 different studios and a really talented capability, but the real differentiator for us as a company is that we own our IP. That IP belongs to us, and we're developing it, and in some cases, we may choose to develop it with a third-party game technology company. We may be the only company that owns, whether it be DC, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones. That's for us to deploy. I think that's particularly important strategically. If you look at Hogwarts, a big piece of the success of that game is that you go into it. If you're a player, you go into that game and you're in that world. That's kind of a new concept. Before it was gaming and it was storytelling, and now it's very difficult to understand what the definition of the metaverse is. When we launch a product on Max or HBO, and when we have a game, that game belongs to us, but now there's this in-betweener. It may be in the next couple of years that we launch a Superman movie and people spend more time and there's more economics of people just hanging out in the Superman world and universe. The fact that we own all that is something that I think is going to be really important as we look forward, as technology develops and it goes on. So look, I'm not going to pretend that all of this is some genius, speaking the gospel or anything. There's a lot of really dumb stuff in this statement. Sorry. But at the end of the day, talking about the metaverse, I guess I get it to an extent. Hogwarts Legacy is big because you feel like you're in Hogwarts. I think that's what he's getting at. I think that he's getting at you feel good about Hogwarts, or Hogwarts did so well because you are a student and they're placing you in that world. But then he loses me when he says that's a new concept that's never been done before. Before it was gaming and then storytelling. So at first it used to be Tetris and Castlevania, and then it became storytelling. So like The Last of Us, but that did have game, and both of these had all of it, right? And then now it's all about world building and nothing else. I don't know what he's talking about there. I don't think that's correct literally at all. But that's a side thing I just wanted to kind of rant on for a second. The biggest thing is when he brings in Superman. So again, he brings in the metaverse, and so the specific line with Superman may sound like it's not about a game, but I think that it is because this entire paragraph is talking about the video game division. So one more time, he says people spend more time and there's more economics of people just hanging out in the Superman world and universe. So how I look at that is he's saying they have some sort of internal data that says that people, this is kind of just a thing you can think of on the top of your head. If you make a Superman game, let's say 10, 15, this is like a low end, 10, 15, 20-hour thing, right? Well, maybe 20 hours isn't so low. But you make an open world Superman game, people are factually going to spend more time in that than they would watching a 2-hour to 2.5-hour movie, correct? Unless they watch that movie, if you watch it 10 times, now you're at 20 hours, but that may be the low end of a game. So I don't think, again, it takes a rocket scientist to come up with those numbers that David has, but it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, why would you say something like that? Why would you throw that in, right? So he's talking about gaming. He then brings in a Superman movie, but then he goes back and he says, well, people spend a lot of time, or we know people will spend a lot of time in a Superman world or universe. Well, that certainly doesn't sound like a movie. It sounds more like you're coming up with a game. And considering, again, the before this statement, he's talking about 11 different companies. One thing I will say, that I like hearing him say is, again, throwing in that third-party stuff, right? So he gloats about, and I mean, that's not a jab. That's like every company, of course, gloats about what they're good at and what they have and stuff, right? So he's gloating about the properties they have. He's gloating about how many studios they have. At the end of the day, you can have as many studios as possible. You're still, to an extent, capped out. You will eventually be capped out, right? If you want every game you can possibly think of, at some point you're going to have to go out and ask people, or have other people pitch it to you and work with those third parties. And he literally says that. He's basically saying we will still own it. So if somebody outside of us wants to make Harry Potter, or if somebody outside of us wants to make Superman, we'll work through those deals, but ultimately we own the IP. So the biggest takeaways here, even besides, so number one, I think he is confirming there's a Superman game coming. I mean, that it could be taking a leap of faith. It could be like that one step too far where you're like, oh, hold on, Alex. He didn't outright say that. I know, but I'm going to assume, honestly, that, and it just makes so much sense. We've heard from James Gunn. We've heard about having games to kind of complement the movies, which I don't like. And I don't, the idea that maybe the actors, I know they've talked about Elseworlds and stuff. I don't need the same person to play the same role across all the mediums. Please, for the love of God, make that be a rare occurrence, right? But, we've already heard this stuff. We've heard the idea that if there's a big thing, odds are you're going to have some sort of game-like companion. I think that's probably backwards. I don't think that's the greatest, but ultimately, it's not about how you get there. In this case, it's about just getting there. It's about just make a Superman game. I don't care how you have to rationalize it to yourself. I don't care what kind of stats you have to throw out. Just make the game. But, beyond that, the other big takeaways, I think, is it doesn't sound like they would ever sell their IPs, right? Like what they own, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, DC, like that is theirs and nobody touches that, right? So I think that was kind of loud and clear. And then the idea that, we have our own studios, we're making our own games, but we are willing to go through third parties, which means cutting a deal with Sony, cutting a deal with Microsoft, cutting a deal, just having a random third party studio make a game. You don't own that studio, but you do own, the IP, and then they make some money, you make some money, and we get a game out of it, which is the most important thing to me. I don't really care about the rest of it, right? So let me know what you think. Is this really the confirmation? Who knows who would be making it? Who knows when they started it? But I do think it's happening. I really, really do. Make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. If you want to check out any of my other social medias, I have a Twitter, I have a second channel, I have a third channel, I have all this stuff. Links are in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.